birth work can be really hard. So set yourself up for success. Have your tools ready and engage in them, before it's too late. Hello and welcome to The Spark, a conversation about childbirth and other radical acts of creation. My name is Elan Vital McAllister, and the topic I want to bring forward today is one that's been coming up a lot lately in conversations with other birth workers. And that's the topic of professional burnout among birth workers. Both how do we prevent it, and if we find ourselves in a state of burnout, how do we shift and get back to feeling inspired and excited about the work that we do? And I want to start this conversation by acknowledging that birth workers are caregivers. And, caregivers hold a really important part, a very, precious place in our society. Caregivers are the ones who are called to show up for one another, to hold space for people who are going through something hard, to be in service when service is needed. Caregivers are the teachers, they are the nurses, they are the parents, they are the ones who care for the elderly. They are the glue that holds our communities together. And that is precious. That is absolutely precious. The nurturing that they bring, the compassion that they offer, takes all of us higher. And there is a shadow side to the caregiver archetype. And that shadow side is a place of overextending. The shadow side is a place of putting the needs of others before your own needs. The shadow side is a place of being so abundant in what you are offering to others, and then being so scarce in what you're offering yourself. And that shadow side to caregivers, to the caregiver archetype, is what brings burnout. It's where burnout takes root, is in the shadow place. And so the tools that I'd like to offer today, there are 4 tools that I've worked with over the years that have helped me both to prevent burnout when I feel it coming, and then also to dig my way out of burnout when it's caught up to me. And so those 4 tools, I hope, are really helpful to you. They've been really helpful to me. They certainly work for birth workers, and I think they would work for any caregiver. So the first tool that I'd like to offer today is the tool of self-care, and the invitation to create a solid self-care practice for yourself. And you get to determine what that is. Only you know what self-care is going to fill your own cup. It might be regular body work. It might be a regular spa day. It might be, a weekly ritual bath with flowers, rose petals and oils, and just something where you are really honoring yourself and your body and creating a time to do that, an intention and a time to really care for yourself, offer that self-care to yourself. It might be, being out in nature. You figure it out. Is it a daily yoga or meditation practice? What would help you to stay in a place of feeling abundant in your life? A place of self-care where you are intentionally filling your own cup. And from that place of a full cup, then we can give to others. Then we can be more generous, as long as we are continually caring for our own well-being. So that's the first tool, radical self-care. And then the second is around creating boundaries. And this is something that's really hard for caregivers because, our natural kind of pull, our compulsion is to show up, is to immediately respond. And then maybe, figure out where our boundaries might be. And sometimes it's too late. but our kind of innate draw is to give, is to give and to give and to give. And so the invitation here is to recognize what your healthy boundaries are, and to create those boundaries and to hold them, to have the integrity of holding your boundaries. And you, again, get to determine what that looks like for you. Where do you need to create boundaries in your life, both personal life and professional life, that will, help to shore you up, that will help, that it will actually be an act of self-care, right? To create these boundaries. And that might be in limiting the number of births that you attend every month, or it might be listening to yourself when you meet with a client and there's a part of you that's like, I don't know if this is a good fit, but you say yes anyway. Maybe a boundary for you might be in recognizing that, no, this is a no. This is not the best fit. I'm going to honor that. I'm going to help them find somebody who is the right fit. And I'm going to open myself to the next client that I'm going to be in better resonance with and potentially have a better experience with. So recognizing the importance of creating boundaries as an act of self-love and holding those boundaries. The third is creating community. And this is so important for birth workers and for caregivers, is to have a community of other professionals who can relate to your professional experiences. So having, other birth workers who, you can call if you've had a challenging birth experience, and they will hold space for you to process it. And they will hold a loving space, a compassionate space, a place where you can work through the experience and be witnessed and be held. Also, a community that maybe can give you some feedback on, on ideas of how you might do things differently next time. Or, if you're in an experience that you've not been in before, that you can reach out to for suggestions, on how to show up in the best possible way. Having that community, knowing that there are people there who have your back, knowing that there are people who have a similar shared experience to you that you can trust, people that you can trust and that get you. That's invaluable. And then the fourth tool that I offer is the tool of ritual. And again, this can mean different things for different people. But the purpose of ritual, right, is to recognize the moment that we're in and to set intention around it. And so an example of how ritual might be helpful in preventing burnout is, if you have, it's to develop a ritual practice around when you have a challenging birth experience. What is the ritual that you do to help yourself process that and let it go? So it might be that you sit down and you write out everything that was challenging in all the words, in all the rawest place, all the rawest, emotions that come up. Just write it out. No one else is going to see it. Get it all out. And then burn it. Let it go. Put out there what was hard and then release it. That might be a ritual that's helpful to you. It might be that you have a ritual after each birth of just journaling about your experience, to have that sort of reverence for the experience, that acknowledgement. It might be that when you come home from a birth, you light a candle and send a blessing to the new soul that's come into the world, to the new family, whatever it might be, that you sit down and you send up a prayer, and that becomes an act of completion around this birth experience. Having these different tools will really help, when things get challenging, and they do get challenging. Birth work can be really hard. So set yourself up for success. Have your tools ready and engage in them, before it's too late, Start that self-care practice before you need a self-care practice, you know. Start practicing creating boundaries and see how that feels. It's typically not a very comfortable thing for caregivers to do, to create boundaries, to say no. Practice it. See how it feels. If it isn't, you know, if it doesn't feel like a shift, if it doesn't make your yes feel stronger, more powerful, more true. Just practicing with these things. And I want to also acknowledge, as we talk about the challenges of being a caregiver, I want to just touch on the sort of macro level of some of the challenges, you know, some of why being a caregiver can feel so challenging. And I want to acknowledge, you know, that we live in a patriarchy, and that the role of the caregiver is considered to be women's work within the larger societal view on these things. And women's work is often, pretty much always, underpaid, underrecognized, undervalued. It's often invisible or unrecognized. And so just to be aware, you know, that that is an overlay, that we are offering this incredibly critical, important work that takes all of humanity higher, that we are offering that within a social construct that does not value that as being as important as other work. Just acknowledging that, okay? Acknowledging, you know, that within a patriarchy, that women are expected to serve and empower men, that people of color are expected to serve and empower white people, that the poorer members of society are expected to serve and empower the wealthy, and that all of those power dynamics exist. And so that when we're talking about being in service as part of who we are, it is not outside of the context of all of those social constructs. So just being aware of that, you know, as you are navigating this incredibly important work that you do, you know, take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. Recognize that it's hard work on a personal one-on-one level, and it's hard, you know, there are challenges within the larger framework, the larger societal framework, and all the power dynamics there. But it is incredibly important and valuable work, and I am so grateful to each of you who identify as a birth worker, as a caregiver, for listening to that calling, for showing up, for doing the work, and for taking precious care of yourself as you do. So, thank you.